All right, I want to jump into things. Don't want to keep you guys too long. We're going to be going into the fundamentals of design. So, jump right in here. There we go. Okay, so a couple quick class updates. We're going to be starting a design portfolio initiative. That will be coming, but so that will be upcoming. Right now in the background, I've been having meetings with recruiters and employers about like, hey, when you guys are hiring outside of like specific hard skills, what are the soft skills you're looking for? How do you want students to present themselves? All that kind of stuff when you're getting employed. I got some really good guidance and insight regarding design portfolios and how those factor into the whole entire employment kind of pipeline. Honestly, I've never had to make a design portfolio before. I just was not a requirement for my career. So I want to work with you guys on making a really kick-ass design portfolio template. So that'll be ongoing. There'll be updates about that. And also a reminder to, if you're looking at moving along with us for doing design projects, we're starting those with a design project in Discord. We've already got some students posting there. So please feel free to post your own project, provide feedback to other students about their projects, and we're going to be doing regular updates on that. All right, got fundamentals of design. You know what? My screen is slightly misaligned here. Just a second here. Oh, no. Give me a second. Oh. There we go. Okay. Great. Okay, fundamentals of design. So basically, every designer is solving customer problems. It's not about coming up with amazing ideas. That's part of it. But like, I remember being in design discussions and people saying, you know what, just make something cool. I was like, that is the most opaque, hard to grok guidance I've ever received. And it took me actually like, I don't think it was until I was working as a designer for about 15 years, I actually figured out what my job even was, aside from making cool stuff. My job was to solve customer problems. Generally, as a designer, or as a game designer, your customer problem is that they're bored and they want to be entertained. That's the problem you're solving as a designer. It's not to show off how smart you are. It's not to copy someone else's work. I want to present to the player a fun experience. I always told myself, if they're interacting with the design I've had a part of, I want this to be the best hour or so of their week, however long they're playing for. As a designer, you're solving customer problems. If you could remember that, that will take care of so many design issues as you develop in your career. So, designers solve customer problems. If the customer doesn't like it, that's on you. As a designer, you cannot point at a customer that's not having a good time and say, well, it's not what they do. It's not that you can't say it's not that the product isn't for them. It's if there's feedback, you've got to be able to listen to it. Sometimes customers are expecting something completely different than what you're making. You're serving them a vanilla shake and they're like, can you make this taste more like chocolate? You're like, that kind of defeats the purpose of vanilla. However, let's look at getting you a chocolate shake for next time. So it's like, it's, as a designer, no matter what, always be listening to what the customers are telling you. If they don't like the experience, generally that's where design is going to take it on the chin, so to speak. Because we are the guardians of customer experience. So overall, for working towards that, you are going to set the experience and emotional tone. How are they supposed to feel about it? Once again, going back to the limbic system, that informs entirely how they will think about the experience as those initial feelings they have. You have to understand the customer needs. What do they want to be able to do with this? You have to be able to make it intuitive. They want to be using the thing, not figuring out how to use the thing. And I will admit, sometimes part of the experience is figuring out how something works oftentimes, but you got to be clear about that. Oftentimes they just want to be using the thing. Oftentimes, as a designer, you fucked up when you've made understanding how the thing works too much of the process of engaging with it. Then you got to resolve friction points, making sure that this is, they're not being frustrated while using it. Like, high latency on a game controller is a really common friction point. And it's a small thing. It's a subtle thing, but it completely derailed the experience. What was it? Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection just came out, and they've got high latency in online matches for controller inputs. And everyone's like, yeah, so now that effectively undoes the entire online match because it's a button timing super important. I've got half a second of latency here, or however long the latency is. I think it was 1/5 of a second, if I remember correctly. That latency, that friction point undoes the experience. Last thing, you have to be able to work within budgets. It doesn't take, if you've got unlimited resources, unlimited money, unlimited time, anyone can make a good product with that. You, as an awesome designer, can work within your constraints. Heck, you can even work within tighter constraints. As a designer, if you're presented with constraints or limitations, take it as a compliment about your professional ability. All right, so that's why I can't quickly go over this poorly designed pot here from those different lenses. So, setting the experience/emotional tone. A pot's not supposed to have a particularly strong emotional tone. That is the design. That is the emotional design of the product. I've got a remote here. I like the fact that this remote is subtle. It goes in the background. It is not insisting anything emotionally. It's not brightly colored red. It doesn't have sparkly things on it. It doesn't have fucking LEDs, thank God, because those would be distracting, because I just want this remote to disappear. Sometimes you want something with a stronger emotional design to it. I understand the customer needs. That is a pot. You've got to be able to put things in it. But however, you also need to be able to pick up and move the pot around where they've kind of failed with that handle placement. Make it intuitive. It is clear how that pot works. It's just very frustrating. And once again, due to the handle placement, resolve friction points. Pretty straightforward, not a lot of friction points there, aside from, again, the handle placement. Work within budgets. I think they did a pretty good job there of not trying to gold plate their pot. So at least they worked within their budgets there. All right. Oh, and of course, again, if you've got any questions, please let me know in the chat. All right, so applying this stuff into games. So the first thing is experience and emotional tone. It's the first way that the player engages with the experience that you're making. Once again, that limbic system, all parts of your brain. When you think about something, it starts at the limbic system. So setting the emotion, tone, or experience of the product influences all other design elements. The design decisions I will make for Minecraft are very different from the design decisions I will make for Elden Ring, because they have to support a different emotional tone. Even if I was to make a Minecraft-like game in Elden Ring, I would want to be approaching that design differently to support the overall emotional tone of it. Understanding the customer needs. What does the customer want to be doing with this product? What information do they need to have? What does the customer want to do? What information do they need? And what goal are they pursuing? This is Tetris for the Game Boy. Really excellent design. Probably one of the best designed games of all time. It's simple, it's clear, it's intuitive. There's almost no wasted pixels on this screen. Each one of the Tetris puzzle pieces fit a very specific part of the overall puzzle. Tetris is not better if you increase the number of blocks on a Tetrimo, I think they're called, whatever they're called, Tetris puzzle piece, from 4 to 5. That makes it too complex. 3 is too few. 4 is the perfect number there. We've got our barriers of the play field are shown by the brick texture there. That's got a different look to it than everything else than all the other main parts of the play field. We have our part of the screen that's showing us what the next block is. the line count, what level we're on, our current score. Very clear, very streamlined, giving the player just about every single bit of information that they currently need. It's a very clear, very streamlined design. Another thing is, of course, making it intuitive. Allow players to jump in and understand quickly. One of the biggest challenges facing video games right now is just how, I'd say, almost anti-customer we've made our product, where like a well-designed product, it should be clear how this thing works. I should be able to jump in, start engaging with it, start pursuing what I want to with it, and not have to sit there and constantly be confused or frustrated or have to get this thing explained to me. So Beat Saber's a really good example of this. It's darkly humorous how much money's been thrown into VR to create these crazy simulations of the real world and like entire communities and space stations you can hang out at. And one of the most dominant pieces of software in VR is Beat Saber, which is just insanely simple. It's just, I'm sitting there, I got my two little Beat Sabers, red one and a blue one. Targets come towards me that are either colored red or blue, and they have an arrow on them. Most people figure it out really quickly. There's a couple of in the far afield on the screen there. There's a couple of obstacles that are coming towards you, those large vertical blocks. They've got a very distinct and very clear visual language. Again, most people understand that you're supposed to be avoiding those. So you dodge left and right, slash, 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 dodge a little bit, slash, slash, slash. They just jump in and start having fun. One of the reasons it's such a engaging experience. All right, so another one, resolving friction points. So time the players spend being mentally fatigued or frustrated, pull them away from the experience. You want to allow players to lose themselves in the experience, thinking about what they want to do, not how they're supposed to be doing it. So here's an example from Civilization. Civilization is by far the most successful 4X game. So, you know, high-level strategy. It is a complex game, but it is far more simple and streamlined, direct and approachable than almost all of its competitors. And that's one of the reasons it's become so successful. It's not because it is the most accurate or the most complex. It has just enough complexity there, and they focus on making it very streamlined, very approachable, very fun, very intuitive. There's always room for improvement, but if you sit down and play, I think it's Star Citizen, and is it Star Citizen? Oh, I'm getting my 4X games mixed up here. Sorry, the name's escaping me. But you go and compare it to some of the more complex and involved 4X games out there. There's a sci-fi one I'm trying to think of, which is the name's escaping me right now. If you just do like an A/B comparison, you'll be amazed at just how streamlined Civilization is. All right, in the chat from Nadine, to say the player would never need a manual for your game. Every now and then, more realistic when it comes to intuitive design. All right, so Nadine, yes, I would agree with that. You don't want to have players referencing a manual. Big exception there is sometimes that can be part of the experience. So again, going back to our emotion and the overall experience we're trying to have here, good example is the game TIS 100, one of my favorite puzzle games. It's about programming in assembly language, and you try to solve computer errors and computer code problems. It's a lot of fun, but one of the very first steps in that game is they ask you to physically print out the manual, because part of the process of the game is working on a puzzle, flipping through the manual, looking at the references, going, okay, let me go through this. And that's just part of, because it's programming the video game. Stellaris. Yeah, I think that's what I was talking about there. Stellaris, thank you. So, sorry, going back to your question there, or comment there, Nadine. So, 99% of the time, you really just want to keep them engrossed in the experience. And if they're sitting there having to go to an external reference or like look up a guide online or something like that, you're pulling them out. You can make referencing an instruction manual part of the experience, but also don't use it as a band-aid and say, oh, looking up things online and figuring out how it works, that's part of the fun. It can be, but I've seen so many people use that to patch over bad design. And what they will see is that, yeah, there are some players that really enjoy that. There's a lot more players that don't enjoy it. And you're going to get, if you're comfortable with every, 3 out of 5 players engaging with your game, getting frustrated and leaving, then that's fine. We need to hold ourselves to a higher level, higher quality of design than that, a higher standard. All right, last one is working within budgets. Good design can find innovation within limitations. This is actually the thing, is you will find if the clear path forward is no longer attainable, that's where you got to roll up your sleeves and actually force yourself to innovate on things. That will push your creativity and the originality of your thinking far more than getting loads of time and loads of budget. It's where you get to prove yourself as a designer. Like, I've got a couple examples here, but I think some really good games that really embrace the limitations is Resident Evil 4 Remake, which I know is a very large budget project, but it's really interesting. Capcom has almost like clockwork been able to release a very big AAA Resident Evil game about every 2 years for the past 8 years, I think it is. And they've been really good. They've sold very well. But even with Resident Evil 4, loads of content that they cut out. There's a bunch of the original Resident Evil 4 that's missing from Resident Evil 4 Remake because they looked at their timeline, looked at how much time they had when they had to release the thing, and they're like, you know what? We're just going to take a good third of the game, and we're just not going to do it. Don't have the time, don't have the resources. We'll take what we can do. We'll make that really good. And it shows up. It's a phenomenal game. It's missing some of my favorite parts from the old game, sure, but you know what? It gave me a lot of new favorite parts as well, because the fucking RE4 Remake's phenomenal. Another example down there from the other side is Hollow Knight. So this is, of course, before Silksong, but I think in Hollow Knight they did a much better job of sticking within their constraints. They had I think 2 people working on the team. They only had a couple of years to get this done. They rolled up their sleeves. They focused on it. They came up with this really excellent Metroidvania. I like Silksong, but where I'd critique, shall we say, they gave themselves unlimited time with Silksong, and I'm not certain that actually resulted in a better game. There was probably a very similar game, possibly an even more superior game they could have created if they given themselves a really strict deadline, because that would have required them to actually really focus on the product that they're making and try to figure out, okay, because we want to experience this big, we've only got this much, how do we make this work? And that's where you kind of roll up your sleeves and challenge yourself, as opposed to having to be like, okay, we can say yes to everything we want to do now, which I find generally just kind of leads to things getting lazy and a little meandering. All right, moving on. So, looking at these design fundamentals across different design disciplines. So, if you're working as a level designer, what's the tone of the level? What's the experience we want the players to have within this level? It is not just, this is a factory, this is a sports stadium, this is a haunted mansion. It's like, what do we want them to feel? Now that we know that, what's the environment that'll properly support that? Making sure the players understand what has to be achieved. What's their goal on the level? So many levels are derailed because they aren't clear about where's the player supposed to go? Why are they even here? What's their objective? So making it clear about what the player, where do the players go? So like, what's my path forward? What's the opposition? What are my blockers for as I'm pursuing my overall high-level goal within the level? So like here with our gray box Uncharted level, this is for Uncharted 4, the path forward's pretty clear. I can see there's a gap there. I'm going to have to navigate. There are enemies. I can see there are two different levels there. There's a high road and a low road. It's pretty clear where I have to go and what the obstacles are that are preventing me from moving forward. For friction, are players getting lost or frustrated? Just watch people play through your level. Where are they getting confused? Are they constantly backtracking? Are they spinning around in circles? All that kind of stuff. And then also designing for how much time and resources that you have. Instead of saying, I want my level to be this, those are the resources I need. Understand the box you're working within. Get a level that works within those limitations. All right, moving on. So looking at this as a systems designer. So let's say I'm designing a level up system or an RPG leveling system here. So for those of you who perhaps aren't familiar, systems designers generally work within the numeric economies of games. So very common in RPGs, but also within 4X games, simulations, even within action games. You need systems designers for balancing overall combat, ammo, all that kind of stuff. It's a designer / mathematician. So if I'm doing a systems designer, I'm doing an RPG leveling system. Again, does it match the tone of the game? The leveling system of, let's say, a Diablo and the leveling system of a Final Fantasy should overall be different. They will have overlap and similarities functionally, but the tone and the style should be quite different. I think probably a better example would be leveling on something like Darkest Dungeon, which is a very dark Lovecraftian style of RPG, versus something like Final Fantasy, which is large, operatic, epic, hopeful, optimistic, all that kind of stuff. If I'm leveling up in Final Fantasy, it should feel like a celebration. If I'm leveling up in Darkest Dungeon, it should feel like I've just pushed back the darkness a little bit. So also if I'm leveling up, going to the next bullet point there, do the players know what they're being asked? As in, if I'm giving them a choice about where they're distributing their points, do they understand what the resources are, how those resources are being used, what the impact of their resource use will be? Do they understand the overall effects of those choices? So if I am putting points into strength, and for some reason that's reducing the amount of damage I take, that is just confusing. That's a poorly designed system there. Does it feel like they can't form a strategy? So if my decisions, if I'm applying points in an RPG system here, if it feels like I can't customize a character or build an overall strategy, that's also going to be a design failure there. Like that's the, let me just gather my thoughts a little bit here. So I think with this, if it's, just trying to think this from points of friction, but overall, if it feels like there's, actually this fourth bullet point, I'll admit, I think I should have clarified this one a little bit more. Sometimes these things, I'll miss out on these things. But generally for a leveling system or something like this, I'd want to be aware of the strategy is going to be important, but more so for friction, it would be something along the lines of, is the interface unclear? Is the interface confusing? Is it hard for me to navigate? If I'm trying to, select the strength bonus here, the cursor just can't get there, or it's unclear exactly how I'm supposed to be interacting with this thing, that would be friction. That would be some poor, not quite poor systems design, it's a bit of UX design there. These things overlap, All right, and then finally, what's the simplest system that gets the job done? As a systems designer, again, working within your budget, you do not want to overcomplicate things. Just go as straightforward as you can. So if I'm working on the design for controls in a game, are they fitting the theme? Here we go for Mario 64. I want those controls to be snappy and energetic and playful. There's a very strong emotion of play and joy and enthusiasm within Mario. He doesn't just jump, he says Yahoo when he jumps. We all know it, we've all heard it. There's a very positive reinforcement with all this kind of stuff. There's a type of physicality to how Mario moves. He's kind of like a bounding toddler to a certain degree, a very athletic bounding toddler. So then also making sure that your controls can be easy understood. There's one button for jump, there's one button for attack. If there's two buttons for jump, that's going to be overall confusing about what we're supposed to be doing here. Can the players use the controls to navigate properly? So making sure that the overall kind of like goals and objectives there are very clear. Then also, can players problem solve? So within the controls, like if the controls are constantly fighting me, or if I'm running into issues with overall like latency or friction or unreliability, then I'm gonna have a really hard time using the controls to overall kind of like solve a problem and engage within the experience. Then, of course, going into budgets again, have you created the simplest control scheme? It can oftentimes feel like you want to be able to add in a whole bunch of moves for Mario to do or something like that. But actually, if you look at the overall timeline of Mario, the recent Mario games give him a much simpler move set than he's had before. Especially Mario Wonder. They really simplified down his move set, and I think it's been really effective overall. That's kind of you working within your budget for the overall controls. All right. So we've kind of gone over our design fundamentals there. Important thing to keep in mind is all design is design, as in like across all the different design disciplines, these fundamentals are pretty consistent. While the tools change, the job stays the same. Oh, is it wrong to map the same action to two different buttons? I would say it is. This is the thing. Every rule's got exceptions to it. And I can imagine there are times where this would be, there's a reason to do it. I think oftentimes if you're mapping the same control to two different buttons, what people think is, oh, we've made this easier because now there are less buttons they have to try to provide the input. But the thing is that if there is a really specific thing that has a repeatable action, that actually really clarifies things. So a really important example of really good design is automotive interior design. And this is the thing with all design is design. I cannot have two things that are operating my turn signals. That would cause me to just get really confused, and that would distract me as I'm trying to remember, okay, wait, like turn signals. It was either that or it was that. Sometimes it's this, it becomes a distraction and it reduces the overall clarity of the experience. And as a result, it costs you more than you gain in that initial exploration. Let's see. Don't know how to say in English, but all right. Anxious is working on something. Yeah, simple doesn't mean easy. Yes, that's actually a really good point there from Anxious in the chat. Oftentimes, simplicity will lead to additional confusion and complexity. There's a difference between simplicity and elegance. One of my favorite examples is a lot of professional photographers are very confused by most consumer cameras because they'll think, oh, there's just one button you can press and that does everything. It's like, well, it says you have to double tap it, or you press and hold, or you triple tap, and they're like, oh my God, just give me a specific control for my focus and for the exposure and all that kind of stuff. Actually, going back to automotive design, a lot of people that can struggle to understand modern software can operate a car, even though a car has about 60 or so bespoke controls in it. And that kind of, there's some variance there for different car layouts, that kind of stuff. But the important thing, all those controls, there's one use and they got a specific physical location. Actually, it's been a massive design fail with modern cars. They moved everything to a touchscreen. It's so confusing and it's just dangerous. If I'm sitting there trying to change the heating in the cabin, I'm having to go through a menu and then press a giant slide thing that has no tactile feedback. It's wildly distracting. All right, so you learn different methods for each skill. So yeah, it's the thing is that design problems are consistent across disciplines and different design disciplines and specifications within those disciplines. You'll learn different methods for each skill. So while the high-level design problems are the same, the tools you're using are different. You have different specific technical skills as a systems designer that you do as a level designer, even though you're ultimately solving the same high-level problems. It's even true for design disciplines outside of games. So for example, if I'm doing fashion design, I have to understand, what's the overall emotion I'm trying to set with this? This suit I wear is to get a very specific emotional response. I was actually looking at who was his name? Oh, Ric Flair. I themed this getup a little bit off of Ric Flair because I'm like, I want that kind of style. I want that kind of attitude. As a fashion designer, you also got to figure out, what do they actually want to do with this thing? Is it a jacket to keep them warm? Is it a pair of pants? Is it a handbag? There's functionality there. You've got to make it clear how they get this thing on and off of them. This is one of the things that's kind of hilarious with a lot of fashion shows. Almost everything that's on the catwalk is a nightmare to get into and out of. And what I find that kind of funny is them saying, look at all of our design. And you would never want to use this because this would just be a constant point of friction. I want to go out for Saturday night. Let me take half an hour to figure out how to get this dress on or what have you. You got to work within your budgets. You've got to make sure that the overall garment is comfortable. It's got to be designed so people can actually clean it. My favorite joke from, was it Mitch Hedberg? This shirt is dry clean only. That means this shirt is dirty. And these are all things, you have to solve these problems as a fashion designer. You got to solve these problems as an industrial designer as well. Just about every designer has to solve these fundamental problems. All right, so let's go into a very specific example from the industry. So we're working as a designer. We get feedback, man, our guns are no fun. So we got to solve the shooting guns is no fun design problem. And we're going to look at this from as we're designing this, we're just going to fail on every single level of these things so you can get a sense of just how they will have this cascading effect. So we're designing a dark action sci-fi FPS. And we got a problem with our guns. So let's take a look at what they're doing there. We're coming as a consultant. They say, you got to help fix our guns. So you take a look. Our dark sci-fi FPS. And they're like, this is the gun we made. It is simple and inoffensive. It's the kind of gun you could introduce to your parents. Well, clearly, this is not setting the emotional tone that we want to have for our dark sci-fi FPS. If I pull up this gun in my inventory, I'm not thinking, yes, I've now turned the tide. I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to get into a water gun fight, or I'm going to shoot Nerf bullets. It's the kind of gun you'd expect to see at a slightly edgy daycare. really not hitting our overall emotional goals on this. So we're going to go and make that gun darker, more serious, more on tone, so we can get our emotional overall goals happening. So another thing, you shoot someone with the gun, and it doesn't kill them, it causes them to run backwards. This is the best example I could find of something like that. So anyways, so the gun's not actually doing something that I would value in this experience. It is not actually solving a problem. There isn't a proper utility for this thing. Functionally, if I'm shooting a gun, I probably want it to incapacitate or destroy or remove a hostile from the playfield. That's kind of what guns do. It is very novel that is causing the character to move backwards. That just isn't solving a problem the player has. Perhaps if I was doing a racing game and I was shooting other racers and they move backwards, that would be great. But we're doing a dark sci-fi action FPS. This is not a usable functionality for that gun. So, okay, we get it so that you shoot an enemy with the gun and the enemy dies. We're moving in the right direction here. And we get our new art for our guns. It no longer looks like something a kid uses. It's dark, it's gothic, it's pseudo-organic, it's a cube. It's a weird biomechanical cube. And as a player, I pull up my new gun and I'm like, what the hell does this even do? Does it fire out of that structure in the, does it fire out of the bottom? Because it looks like there's some kind of orifice on the bottom of this thing. There are these little points scattered across the top. Do those do anything? This has now just become overly abstract, and there's a lot of overall confusion in what this thing is even supposed to be doing. It is emotionally on point, it is killing enemies, but I pull it out and I'm sitting there, I'm effectively having to look up the instructions on how this thing works, because it is not clear to me how this thing is supposed to be working. So they finally get that fixed. They actually make a gun. You try it out in game, and there's 10 frames of latency. They didn't put crosshairs, and when I shoot enemies, there's no hit reaction. They're like, yeah, we're innovating here. What we've got is you shoot the enemy with the gun, and it's boiling their insides, and eventually they'll just fall over after a certain period. And we just didn't really care about the latency and all that kind of stuff. And this is just, there's so much friction and confusion and how to use this thing. This gun isn't a lot of fun. So all these things, that the lack of a crosshair makes it unclear what exactly I'm shooting at. There's no reaction when I actually hit weapons with a projectile from this thing. And if I click, I've got to be sitting there waiting for this thing to actually fire. All right, so finally get all those things fixed. Then they come back and they go, okay, we got a great feeling gun, and we're going to make 50 of these things, and they're all being carefully, bespokely designed by an artisanal group of people in Belgium and Brazil, and we hired the most expensive FPS gun artisans to make 50 guns that are ultimately very simple, very similar to each other, thus making the feature wildly expensive and overly epic and verbose and just too grand. We are not making, this is very much the opposite of elegance. That is the final problem that we run into as we're designing our FPS guns here. And the thing is, really, like a good FPS gun, like, it's pretty straightforward. Like, if I want to do a dark action gun, it's a shotgun. We've seen it before. It's a double-barreled shotgun. We've seen that before. These are all things that are very similar, but they work. It's a nice, emotionally evocative, snappy, clear, overall design. It's great. That is a well-designed weapon there. So, all right, that's just going through kind of how you evaluate a design problem using the different kind of design fundamentals there. All right, I think this kind of wraps things up for us. Does anyone have any questions? in the chat? All right, we're waiting. I think there might be a bit of a delay there. If there are no questions, let me know. I feel like I should be playing some like waiting room or Jeopardy music right now. I do it a cappella, but it probably won't work out well. All right, I think we're good there. No questions at the moment. All right. In that case, I think we're going to wrap things up. Oh, wait. What stage of development do you think about the final touches? Oh, that will depend. So generally, I find if everything is feeling relatively good enough, like I can give it to someone, give the weapon to someone, and they're like, again, we're a first-person gun example, have someone use the gun, like, okay, yeah, that's feeling pretty good. That's, you know, it makes sense. I'm liking it. Great, cool. Start working on that, or at least that can be good enough. I can then go back and polish that up later. Generally, if I'm working on a design, I want to ensure that we've got a good sense of the fundamentals on the initial version of it before I sign off on it. I go, okay, we've solved all those problems that we have, those kind of 5 overall questions. Now that we've got that figured out, we can go back and revisit this and continue to improve and iterate on it later. But right now, we've set our foundation up for success. So I'd say final touches, I'd worry about that towards the end, but I would not, I'd ensure that I don't include essential elements of the experience as part of the final touch. Like for example, if we've got, you know, if the gun has half a second of latency on it, I don't fix that as part of final touches. I fix that in the prototyping process. Just be like, look, we've got to at least make this a good enough experience, the half second of latency. Yeah, we all know it's a problem. We won't get to it later. We will fix that now because that is completely derailing the all their experiences with the gun. If you haven't solved these overall problems, then it's very difficult to adjust, refine, and really polish the overall experience going forward. Because you keep getting derailed by, you know, the gun looks like a Tinker toy or something like that. And again, you don't need final art. Perhaps we just have a gray box gun, but instead of having the gray box gun be bright pink, let's make it a dark gunmetal gray or something like that. No, I think we got someone joining our class just a little bit late here. So let's get someone in here. Oh. They came and then they left. All right. Anyways, any other questions? What kind of design do we start with something abstract and simple and make it more complex over time? No, what you want to be doing. Second here, my camera's gotten all goofy. There we go. All right, so from Rocky R, when it comes to designing, do I start with something abstract and simple and make it more complicated over time? No. Your design should probably be the most complex at the start, and then you will simplify it down as you work on it. And it's not always going to be straightforward. Sometimes, generally, it should be trending as like maximum complexity, and it starts trending down. Occasionally, you'll add in additional complexity because sometimes you'll oversimplify something. Like, okay, we took away too much. Let's add in some more complexity to that. But your design time should be spent clarifying and simplifying things. As a designer, if you're hitting that delete button, you should be patting yourself on the back. You're like, we no longer need this. I can get rid of it. And that means we can make everything else better. Design isn't additive, it's subtractive. Think of one of the most useful resources you have is your team's attention and focus. I can either be now there's a set amount of that, set number of team members, set hours in the day. There's only so much attention and focus. I can either spread that attention and focus across 10 features, or I can take that same attention and focus and spread it across 5 features. There are 5. And those 5 features will shine so much more brightly. So you always want to be simplifying as a designer. Provided, of course, you have not oversimplified. I think one of my favorite examples of an overly simplified design was Super Mario Run on mobile phones. The fact that that Mario can only move forwards and can't move backwards, I love that they made such a direct and ambitious and brave kind of simplification to Mario. But it turns out the Mario gameplay and level design really needs to give the player the chance to create small corrections by going backwards. And it just always playing it like, yeah, this I am more frustrated while playing this than having fun, because I keep being like, man, I really wanted to get that coin, and if I could just go back by like half an inch, that'd be super useful. So I think it's a case of even someone like Nintendo just oversimplifying things. But generally, you want to be going towards simplification. All right, does anyone else have any more questions? Anyone? Bueller? All right, if no one stops me, I'm gonna wrap up the stream.